What is up, Patriots? I'm your host, John O'Connor, and it's Monday, October 20th. Welcome to another episode of O'Connor's Quick Strike. I hope everyone had a great weekend. As many of you know, I have a wedding coming up in a few months, and I've decided to sell some of my baseball card collection to chip away at some of the wedding costs. So my weekend's been pricing them and getting them ready for eBay. So pretty low-key weekend. Oh, and I also watched some On Patrol Live, watched some of the Tennessee-Alabama game, and then watched the NASCAR Talladega race. Also planned out my American flag pumpkin carving design, which I plan to do next weekend. And once that's completed, I'll get a picture up on X of when it's done. So overall, a pretty relaxing weekend. So today, and while you're here, I'm coming at you with 3 stories the mainstream media either won't cover or will spin so hard you won't recognize the truth. And let me tell you, today's lineup is something special. We've got breaking news from yesterday that happened in South America that should give every American hope. Then we're heading to the UK to see exactly where leftist policies lead when nobody stops them. And we're closing with a story so infuriating, so dangerous, that it should make your blood boil. Let's get into it.
3.
Yesterday, millions of Bolivians went to the polls and made history. They voted in a presidential runoff election that marks the end of nearly 20 years of socialist rule. And Patriots, the Socialist Party didn't just lose, they got demolished. Let me give you the background. For 2 decades, Bolivia was run by the Movement Toward Socialism Party, MAS for short. First under Evo Morales, who was basically a wannabe dictator and is now a fugitive facing pedophilia allegations. Then under Luis Arce, whose disastrous socialist policies ran the country into the ground. So, how bad did it get? The MAS Party, which dominated Bolivian politics since 2006, got just 3% of the vote in the first round back in August. 3%. That's not a loss. That's a total rejection. That's voters saying, we're done with your garbage. So yesterday's runoff was between 2 pro-market conservative candidates. Former President Jorge Quiroga on the right and Senator Rodrigo Paz, who's more centrist but still pro-capitalism. Either way, socialism is done in Bolivia. Now, here's what 20 years of socialism did to this country. Inflation hit 23%, the highest since 1991. They have massive fuel shortages. People are literally sleeping in their cars overnight just to wait in line for just a few gallons of gas. The country's net reserves fell from $14 billion a decade ago to about $2 billion today. Oil production fell 60%. Natural gas output dropped 46%. And 84% of Bolivians are working in the informal economy, so meaning they're just basically surviving. This is what socialism always does. It promises equality and delivers poverty. It promises prosperity and delivers shortages. It promises freedom and delivers misery. And here's the part that should matter to Americans. Both candidates in yesterday's election flew to Washington to meet with the Trump administration officials. And the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, called this election one of the more promising developments after 2 decades of anti-American hostility under the socialists. Because guess who Bolivia was buddying up with under socialism? China, Russia, Cuba, and Venezuela. All the greatest hits of tyranny and failure. Now they want to restore relations with the United States and open their economy to foreign investment. Bolivia has the world's largest lithium reserves. That's critical for batteries and technology. Under socialism, it was locked up and poorly managed. Now it's going to be developed properly with free market principles. This election is huge, and almost nobody in America is talking about it. While the mainstream media obsesses over every Trump tweet and covers leftist No King protests, an entire country just rejected socialism and chose capitalism. An entire country said enough to the policies that Bernie Sanders and AOC want to bring here. Pay attention to what happened in Bolivia, because it's a preview of what needs to happen here if we ever let the left take full control.
2.
Now, let's talk about what happens when leftists actually get that control. Let's go to the United Kingdom. This past Saturday, just 2 days ago, thousands of Brits marched through London protesting their government's plan to force mandatory digital IDs on every citizen. And when I say mandatory, I mean mandatory. You won't be able to work without one. You won't be able to access government services. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said it plainly, and I quote, "You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that," end quote. The protesters carried signs that should chill every freedom-loving American. If you accept digital ID today, you've accepted social credit tomorrow. Another one. Once scanned, never free. No to digital ID. A petition against this plan has nearly 3 million signatures. In a country of just 67 million people, that's massive. The petition says, and I quote, "We think this would be a step towards mass surveillance and digital control, and that no one should be forced to register with state-controlled ID systems." And, in my opinion, they're absolutely right. This is about control. Now, the government is pitching this as a way to combat illegal immigration, claiming that if employers have to verify digital IDs, they won't hire illegal immigrants. But here's the thing. Criminals don't follow laws. Illegal immigrants aren't exactly known for respecting rules about documentation. So, who does this really impact? Law-abiding British citizens. This whole plan comes from Tony Blair, the globalist former Labour Prime Minister who's been pushing this for 20 years. It's wartime-style identity papers repackaged with technology. And the left-wing Labour government under Keir Starmer is making it happen by 2029. But it gets worse. The government initially said this was just about work and immigration. Now, they're talking about expanding it to everything. Want to buy a pint at the pub? Show your digital ID to prove your age. Want to access healthcare? Digital ID. Want to open a bank account? Digital ID. This is the social credit score system that China uses, just with a British accent. And here's what really gets me. Britain already tried this. Labour passed mandatory ID cards back in the 2000s under Tony Blair. When the Conservative Liberal coalition took over in 2010, one of their first acts was repealing it because the British people hated it. But now, Labour is back in power, and they are doing it again. Except, this time, it's digital and even more invasive. The UK is also cracking down on free speech in ways that should terrify Americans. They passed something called the Online Safety Act that allows the government to fine social media companies up to £18 million, or 10% of their global revenue, if they don't censor content according to British standards. And it's already happening. When there were anti-immigration protests recently, British users on X, Twitter, started getting messages saying, "Due to local laws, we are temporarily restricting access to this content." People couldn't even view footage of protests in their own country. VPN searches in Britain surged 700% as people tried to get around the censorship by making it look like they were in another country. This is where the leftist policies lead. Once they get power, they don't want to govern. They want to control. They want to know where you are, what you're doing, what you're saying, who you're talking to. They want total surveillance wrapped in the language of safety and combating misinformation. The Trump administration's State Department just released a report saying that human rights in the UK have worsened due to speech crackdowns. The United States government is officially concerned about freedom in Britain. Just let that sink in. Americans need to pay attention to what's happening in the UK, Because the same leftists who want to censor misinformation here are watching what Labor does over there and taking notes. The same people who want hate speech laws here are cheering Britain's restrictions. The same people who want a national database here love the idea of mandatory digital IDs. This is the canary in the coal mine, folks. Britain is showing us exactly where these policies lead, to a surveillance state where the government tracks your every move and censors your speech. The good news? That British people are fighting back. 3 million signatures on that petitions, thousands marching in the streets. They see where this is going, and they're saying no. We need that same energy here. So for this final story, I'm just going to preface this. I'm going to butcher some names here as we go through this, and I think you'll understand quickly why. But now this is the story that's going to make you furious. The FBI just arrested a 33-year-old Hamas operative named Mahmoud Al-Muhtadi. Again, there's going to be some butchering here. He participated in the October 7, 2023 terrorist attack on Israel. You know, the one where Hamas slaughtered over 1,200 people and kidnapped about 250 hostages. And where did they arrest him? Lafayette, Louisiana, working at a restaurant. Let that sink in. A guy who took part in one of the worst terrorist attacks in modern history was living in America, working a normal job, posting on social media, living his life, because Joe Biden let him in. According to the FBI complaint that was unsealed this week, Al-Muhtadi was part of a group that attacked Kibbutz Kfar Aza on October 7th. 60 people were killed there. 19 were kidnapped. And this guy was allegedly right in the middle of it. The FBI says Al-Muhtadi armed himself and led a group from Gaza into the southern Israel during the attack. In phone calls that morning, he told his terrorist buddies to bring the rifles and that there is kidnapping and it's a game which will be a good one. A game? He called murdering innocent people and kidnapping civilians a game. This animal was affiliated with the military wing of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. He conducted firearms training for terrorists. His social media and email accounts showed he'd been involved with terrorist groups for years. So, begs the question, how did he get into America? He applied for a visa in Cairo, Egypt in June of 2024, 6 months after the October 7th attack. On his application, he lied and said he had never been involved in paramilitary organization or terrorist activity, and the Biden administration let him in. He arrived in the U.S. under Biden's watch. He told immigration officials he was going to work in car repairs and food service in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they just waved him on through. Once he got here, he moved around. He ended up in Louisiana. And earlier this year, he was posting photos on social media from Tulsa showing off a Glock 9mm handgun. A Hamas terrorist was posting gun photos on social media from inside the United States. The FBI says American citizens were among the victims of the attacks he participated in on October 7th. So, this wasn't just an attack on Israel. It was an attack on Americans, too. And Biden's open border policy let him waltz right on in. Now, here's the question that should keep every American up at night. If they caught this guy, how many others are out there? How many other terrorists slipped through Biden's disaster of a border policy? How many are here right now, posting on social media, working normal jobs, and waiting? Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry responded to the arrest by basically saying, justice will be served. But the damage is already done. This terrorist was here for over a year before they caught him. The FBI's complaint was actually filed back on October 6th, but they've asked for it to be sealed so Al-Muhtadi wouldn't get tipped off and flee the country. Smart move, because remember, he got in under Biden's policy. He probably figured he could just stick around indefinitely. This is the direct result of having a president who didn't believe in borders, didn't believe in vetting, and didn't believe in putting Americans first. Biden spent 4 years telling the world, come on in, we won't check too carefully. And a Hamas terrorist took him up on the offer. Now, Trump's administration is dealing with the cleanup. With Hamas losing power in Gaza as part of Trump's historic peace deal, the FBI is probably looking into how many more terrorists managed to slip in during Biden's open border years. Because you better believe this guy wasn't the only one. This story connects everything we've talked about today. Bolivia rejected socialism because it destroys countries economically. Britain is fighting digital IDs because the left wants total control. And Biden's open borders literally let a terrorist into our country because the left cares more about virtue signaling than protecting Americans. These aren't separate issues. It's all part of the same pattern. Leftist policies lead to disaster. Whether it's economic collapse, loss of freedom, or literal terrorists living among us, the left's ideas don't work. They never have. They never will. So, here's what you need to remember from today's episode. Bolivia just proved that socialism fails every time, and people will reject it when given the choice. Britain is showing us what happens when the left gets power: surveillance, censorship, control. And Biden's open borders put a Hamas terrorist in Louisiana, proving that leftist immigration policies don't just fail economically, they endanger American lives. The good news? People are waking up. Bolivians rejected socialism. Brits are fighting back against digital tyranny. And Trump's administration is arresting the terrorists Biden let in. But we can't get complacent. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting for freedom. Because the left never stops pushing, and neither can we. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor's Quick Strike. I'm John O'Connor. Stay vigilant, Patriots, and I'll see you on Wednesday.